The day Earth joined the stars should have been humanity's greatest triumph. Instead, it became their greatest embarrassment. Jack Miller stood quietly at the back of Earth's delegation, trying not to fidget in his new suit as the massive doors to the Galactic Council chamber swung open. As the team's technical advisor, he wasn't supposed to speak, just observe and take notes. The diplomats ahead of him straightened their backs and lifted their chins. They had practiced this moment for months. The chamber was enormous, with seats for hundreds of different species arranged in rising tiers around a central speaking platform. Lights from a dozen artificial suns streamed through crystal domes overhead. Beings of all shapes, sizes, and colors turned to stare at the humans entering their sacred hall, announcing the representatives of planet Earth, Sol System, Western Spiral Arm, Bunda Translator. The words echoed in the vast space. President Laura Bell stepped forward, her speech ready. "Honorable members of the Galactic Council, we come in peace and friendship. Earth is honored to." A sound interrupted her. It started small, then grew louder. Laughter. Not just from one section, but rippling across the entire chamber. Some aliens made chittering sounds, others rumbled deep in their chest cavities, and some emitted high whistles. But all were clearly laughing. "Is this some kind of joke?" asked a tall, blue-skinned being with 4 arms and eyes that shimmered like oil on water. A Class 4 developing world requesting council membership. The Earth delegation froze. Jack felt his face grow hot with embarrassment. The council leader, a being called Grand Administrator Krell, raised a hand for quiet. His skin looked like polished bronze, and his 6 eyes blinked in sequence. "Earth representatives," he said, his voice deep and slow. "Your achievement of basic faster-than-light travel is noted. However, you have barely left your own star system. Your technology is primitive. Your social structures are chaotic. You have nothing to offer the council except perhaps entertainment." More laughter followed. Jack noticed how the Earth diplomat's shoulders slumped. A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, showing images from Earth: wars, pollution, poverty. "Violent, short-lived, and barely in control of your own biology," continued a thin alien with skin like tree bark. "The Council has been observing Earth for centuries. You are children playing with dangerous toys. Perhaps in another 1,000 years," added another council member, "you might be ready for associate status." Jack watched President Bell try to salvage the situation, but each point she made was countered with evidence of human failings or technological backwardness. The aliens had answers for everything, presented with the casual confidence of beings who had mastered the stars, while humans were still fighting with swords. Later, in their assigned quarters on the massive space station, the Earth delegation sat in stunned silence. Their rooms, Jack noticed, were in the lowest level of the station, far from the grand chambers of the important species. "They're treating us like we're nothing," muttered Defense Secretary Thompson, his face ashen. "They classified us as a quaint curiosity. We'll never get fair trade agreements or technology sharing." Jack barely heard the conversation. His mind was racing, examining everything he had seen in the council chamber. The alien technology was advanced, yes, but something about it seemed oddly limited, predictable. There was a pattern to their thinking that he couldn't quite put his finger on. That night, while others drowned their sorrows, Jack sat at his small desk, sketching ideas and making notes. They might laugh at Earth now, but something told him they were missing something important about humans. And Jack Miller was going to figure out exactly what that was. 3 months after returning to Earth, Jack barely left his lab. While the world governments argued about their new lowly status in the galaxy, Jack worked. While news channels debated whether humanity should isolate itself or try again with the Council, Jack studied. His apartment had become a mess of parts, tools, and sketches. Screens displayed alien technical manuals he had secretly downloaded from the Council archives. Jack had broken at least 7 international laws to get this information, but he didn't care. He had seen something on that station, something important. It's all so logical, he muttered to himself, running his hand through his unwashed hair. Too logical. The alien technology was perfect, clean. Every system built with mathematical precision, but also strangely rigid. Jack had been up for nearly 40 hours straight when he finally understood. He was staring at a cup of coffee, watching how the liquid moved when he tapped the side. The ripples were chaotic but beautiful, following rules but never exactly the same twice. "That's it," he shouted, jumping up so quickly he knocked over the cup. "They don't understand chaos." The aliens built technology like they were following a recipe book. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to think outside normal rules, to feel their way through problems, to use intuition alongside logic. For weeks after this realization, Jack experimented with quantum field technology he had glimpsed on the station. The aliens manipulated these fields through complex mathematics. Jack tried something different. He built a neural interface that allowed him to visualize the quantum fields and shape them with his mind, using intuition rather than equations. The first tests failed catastrophically. His neighbors complained about power outages. The local power company threatened to cut him off. But on the 27th attempt, something extraordinary happened. The small device on his workbench began to glow with soft blue light. The energy readings on his instruments climbed steadily, then faster, then off the scale. The power was clean, stable, and far more efficient than anything humanity had created before. And it worked in a way that defied the aliens' understanding of physics. "We think differently," Jack whispered, staring at his creation. "We can feel the quantum fields, not just calculate them." He called his old boss at the space agency the next day. Dr. Alex Reed was skeptical at first, but agreed to visit Jack's lab. When he saw the device, his mouth fell open. "This is impossible," Dr. Reed said, circling the small generator. "You're pulling energy from subspace without a containment field." The aliens said that was theoretical at best, dangerous at worst. "I'm not containing it," Jack explained. "I'm dancing with it. The field responds to human neural patterns in a way their computers can't replicate." Dr. Reed made some calls. Soon, government officials arrived. They watched demonstrations. They asked questions. They argued among themselves. "I need to take this back to the council," Jack insisted. "We have something valuable now. Something they don't understand." The officials were afraid. What if the aliens just stole the technology? What if they saw it as a threat? "Look," Jack said, "they're already laughing at us. What more can they do? But if this works, if I can show them that humans have unique abilities, maybe they'll start to respect us." After weeks of debate, President Bell finally agreed. Jack would return to the Galactic Council with his invention. A small team would accompany him, scientists and diplomats who believed in his work. The night before their departure, Jack couldn't sleep. He sat looking at the small device that might change humanity's future. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't as elegant as alien technology, but it did something their machines couldn't. Tomorrow, he would show the galaxy what one human man could do, and no one would be lacking then. The Earth ship docked at the massive Galactic Council station once again. This time, Jack stepped off the ramp with his head held high, carrying a small metal case that contained his invention. The humans were given the same poor welcome as before: low-level greeters, basic accommodations, and suspicious looks from passing aliens. "Don't worry," Jack told the small team of Earth scientists with him. "They won't be looking at us like that for long." But getting anyone important to see his device proved harder than Jack expected. Their requests for a demonstration were ignored. Their messages to council members went unanswered. After 5 days of waiting, Jack was getting frustrated. "They won't even give us a chance," complained Dr. Reed, who had joined the mission at the last minute. "It's like we're invisible." Jack paced their small common room, thinking, "Then we'll have to make ourselves impossible to ignore." He spent that night studying the station's public maps, looking for an opportunity. The next morning, he found it, A notice about a minor power fluctuation in the main council chamber systems. Nothing serious, but a perfect opening. I'm going for a walk, he told the team, tucking his device into a bag. Jack wandered through the public areas of the station, moving higher and higher through its levels. He wore a simple jacket that covered his human clothes and kept his head down. Most aliens barely glanced at him. Humans weren't important enough to remember. Using maintenance passages he had discovered on the maps, Jack made his way to the back of the Great Council chamber. A service panel was open, with an alien technician frowning at the controls inside. Power diagnostics still showing instability. The technician muttered in the common galactic language. Must be a sensor error. Jack watched from around a corner. When the technician stepped away to get a tool, Jack made his move. He slipped into the small maintenance room and quickly studied the power systems. They were advanced, but followed the same logical patterns he had come to expect from alien technology. Just as he started to connect his device to the system, the technician returned. "What are you doing? Humans are not permitted here." The tall, insect-like alien reached for an alarm button. "Wait." Jack held up his hands. "Your power cord is starting to destabilize. Look at the readings." The technician hesitated, then checked the display. His compound eyes widened. This is not possible. The safety systems should have." A low rumble shook the station. The lights flickered. "The main council session starts in 10 minutes, the technician said, antenna quivering with stress. "If the power fails, I can help," Jack said, pulling out his device. "This can stabilize your system." "That primitive thing." "Impossible." Another rumble, louder this time. Warning lights flashed on the control panel. "Let me try," Jack insisted. "What do you have to lose?" The technician's mandibles clicked nervously, but he stepped aside. Jack quickly connected his quantum field generator to the alien power system. He placed his hands on the neural interface and closed his eyes, feeling the chaotic energy flows. Unlike the aliens' rigid control systems, Jack's mind could adapt to the changing patterns, flowing with them rather than fighting them. Inside the council chamber, the galaxy's most powerful beings were gathering when the lights suddenly dimmed. Worried murmurs spread through the crowd. Grand Administrator Krell was about to call for an evacuation when the lights came back on, brighter and steadier than before. In the maintenance room, the technician stared at the readings in disbelief. Power output up 300%. Efficiency improved across all systems. "This is not possible." Jack smiled, sweat beading on his forehead as he maintained the connection. Not impossible, just human. An alarm sounded, not a warning, but a notification. The technician's communicator buzzed. "The council's chief scientist is detecting the power anomaly," he said, sounding shocked. "Professor Orcs himself is coming to investigate." Jack's heart raced. This was exactly what he wanted, a chance to show what humans could do to someone who mattered. He steadied his breathing and focused on the quantum fields, making them dance to a tune only a human mind could hear. The door slid open, and a tall, white-haired alien with silver skin entered the room, flanked by security guards. His 4 eyes narrowed as he saw Jack. "What," Professor Orcs said coldly, "is a human doing with our power systems?" 3 weeks later, Jack found himself in a strange position. He had a small lab in the science wing of the station, far better than the tiny rooms where the Earth delegation had stayed. After seeing his device stabilize the power core, Professor Orcs had reluctantly offered him a temporary research position. "The human is fixing our power problem," was the official reason. But Jack knew the truth. They wanted to figure out how his technology worked, then send him back to Earth. Still, it was a chance to learn more about the galactic community from the inside. Jack worked alongside alien scientists who treated him with a mixture of curiosity and thinly veiled contempt. Most believed his success with the power core had been luck, not skill. Only Talia, a blue-skinned scientist from a species called the Lorendi, showed genuine interest in his work. Her people were also considered lesser by the council standards. They don't understand what you did, she told Jack one day, her large eyes blinking slowly. It scares them. Good, Jack replied with a smile. Maybe fear will lead to respect. As they worked together, Jack learned troubling things about the Galactic Council. The Vagerans, the most powerful species, controlled most of the advanced technology. They limited what lesser species could access, claiming it was for safety. My world has suffered water shortages for generations, Talia explained. We know the Vagerans have atmospheric conversion technology that could help us, but they claim we're not ready for it. Jack frowned. That sounds familiar. Earth has similar problems they could help solve. One evening, working late in the lab, Jack noticed Talia acting strangely. She kept glancing at the door and speaking more quietly than usual. Follow me, she finally whispered. There's something you need to see. Talia led Jack through a maze of corridors, using her access card to enter restricted areas. They finally reached a massive data storage facility. I shouldn't be showing you this, she said nervously. But you humans think differently. Maybe you'll see something we've missed. She accessed a terminal and showed Jack files containing technologies far beyond what even the advanced council species claim to possess. Water purification systems, advanced medical treatments, even technology to repair damaged atmospheres, all marked as restricted. These could help so many worlds, Jack said, anger rising in his chest. The Vagerans keep the best technology for themselves, Talia explained. They maintain power by keeping the rest of us dependent and thinking we're inferior. As they studied the files, they heard a door open nearby. Talia quickly shut down the terminal. Someone's coming, she whispered. We need to leave. They slipped out through a back entrance just as a group of Vageran security officers entered the facility. Jack's heart pounded as they hurried back toward the public areas of the station. Over the next few days, Jack noticed younger alien scientists visiting his lab more frequently. They were curious about his approach, the way he used intuition alongside calculations. A few even asked him to explain his methods. It's like feeling the energy, he tried to explain to a group of them, not just measuring it. They didn't fully understand, but they were intrigued. Word was spreading. Jack's presence was creating ripples across the station's scientific community. Then one morning, Jack arrived at his lab to find it sealed off. Guards stood at the door. Professor Orcs waited nearby, his silver face unreadable. Your access has been revoked, human, he said coldly. The High Council has received information that you accessed restricted databases. Furthermore, there are concerns that your technology violates safety protocols. Jack felt cold anger building inside him. You mean the Vagerans are worried I've seen too much? Orlex's eyes narrowed. You will be sent back to Earth immediately. Your device will remain here for proper safety evaluation. You're stealing my invention, Jack said flatly. Hardly stealing, Orlex replied. Simply ensuring that primitive beings don't harm themselves with technology they can't possibly understand. Jack clenched his fists. Everything he had worked for was being taken away. But as he looked at the faces of the younger scientists watching from a distance, he realized something important. He had already started changing minds. And he wasn't finished yet. This isn't over, Jack said quietly. Instead of meekly accepting his deportation, Jack made a bold move. He marched straight to the council chambers, pushing past surprised guards who weren't used to humans showing such confidence. I demand to speak to the council under the right of challenge, Jack shouted as he entered the grand hall. The room fell silent. Hundreds of alien eyes turned to stare at him. Grand Administrator Krell rose from his seat, his bronze face showing rare surprise. Humans have no standing to invoke the right of challenge, Krell said coldly. Remove this creature. Actually, came a voice from the side of the room. He does. Talia stepped forward, holding a small datapad. I sponsored his application to the Science Division, under Section 47 of Council Law, that gives him temporary rights as an associate species member. Jack had no idea Talia had done this. He gave her a grateful nod as confused murmurs spread through the chamber. "What challenge do you propose, human?" asked a Vajoran representative, his voice dripping with contempt. Jack took a deep breath. "The colonies in the Outer Rim are being destroyed by ion storms. Your scientists have failed to solve this problem for decades. I challenge your best engineer to a contest. We will each create a solution. Let the results speak for themselves." The Vajoran representative laughed. "You would pit your primitive human mind against Chief Engineer Drax, the greatest scientific mind in the galaxy." "Exactly," Jack said, standing tall. "Unless you're afraid a primitive human might win." That provoked angry shouts from the Vajoran section. Jack had studied alien psychology enough to know pride was universal. After heated debate, the council surprisingly agreed to the challenge. They set the terms: 1 week to develop a solution, followed by a live demonstration using real data from the Outer Rim. The event would be broadcast throughout council space. As Jack left the chamber, Talia hurried to catch up with him. "That was either very brave or very foolish," she said. "Drax is brilliant, even by Vajoran standards." "I know," Jack replied. "But I've seen the Vajoran approach to ion storms in those restricted files. They're trying to control something that can't be controlled, not with their methods." For the next week, Jack worked day and night in a small lab they reluctantly provided him. His Earth team helped where they could, but the approach he was taking was something only he fully understood. It combined what he had learned from the alien technology with humanity's unique perspective. Talia visited often, bringing supplies and information. "Everyone is talking about the challenge," she told him. "Many lesser species are secretly hoping you succeed. The Vajorans have kept us down for too long." On the final night before the demonstration, Jack looked at his device. It was smaller than he expected, just a silver disc with a neural interface attached. It didn't look impressive, but it didn't need to. What mattered was inside. The day of the challenge arrived. The demonstration would take place in a massive amphitheater, with the council and representatives from hundreds of worlds watching. A huge holographic display showed the ion storms raging around a small colony world. Chief Engineer Drax presented first. His solution was exactly what Jack expected: a massive network of energy-dampening fields that suppressed the ion storms through brute force. The display showed the storms weakening, becoming manageable. "As you can see," Drax announced proudly, "my system reduces storm intensity by 78.3%. The colonies can be protected with this technology." There was polite applause. It was an impressive achievement by conventional standards. Then it was Jack's turn. He stepped forward, holding his small disc. Many in the audience snickered at the simple-looking device. "The Vajoran approach fights against the storms," Jack explained. "My approach works with them." He activated his device and placed his hands on the neural interface. The audience watched as he closed his eyes, his mind connecting with the quantum fields. On the display, something unexpected happened. Instead of fighting the storms, Jack's device created resonance patterns that matched their energy. The storms didn't weaken. They transformed, their destructive energy redirected into harmonic waves. "What is happening?" demanded Krell. Jack opened his eyes and smiled. "I'm not stopping the storms. I'm talking to them." The audience watched in stunned silence as the holographic display showed Jack's technology at work. The ion storms that had been raging destructively around the colony were now flowing in beautiful controlled patterns. Where Drax's technology had suppressed the storms, Jack's had transformed them. "Impossible," muttered Drax, his pale face turning even whiter. "The storms cannot be directed. They are chaotic by nature." "Not directed," Jack corrected him, maintaining his focus on the neural interface. "Understood. There's a pattern in the chaos that your computers can't see, that the human mind can feel." On the display, the transformed ion storms began to circle the colony world. But instead of destroying structures, they were feeding energy into collection points. The colony's power readings were rising rapidly. He's turned the storms into a power source, Talia explained to the stunned council members. The same energy that was destroying the colonies is now powering them. The amphitheater erupted in a mix of shocked gasps, excited murmurs, and angry shouts. Jack maintained his connection with the interface, showing how his system adapted to changes in the storm patterns without needing adjustment. When he finally disconnected, sweat pouring down his face from the mental strain, the room had divided into clear factions. The Vagerans and their allies looked furious. The representatives from lesser species were openly cheering, and the neutral council members were deep in urgent discussion. The results were undeniable. Jack's solution was not just better. It represented an entirely different approach to technology, one that many thought impossible. This demonstration has been falsified, Chief Engineer Drax declared, stepping forward. No primitive neural interface could possibly manage quantum fields with such precision. Then try it yourself, Jack suggested, holding out the device. Anyone can use it. The interface adapts to the user's neural patterns. Drax stepped back, as if the device might burn him. I will not connect my mind to untested human technology. A young scientist from one of the neutral worlds stepped forward instead. I will try, she said boldly. Jack handed her the device and showed her how to use the neural interface. At first, nothing happened as she struggled to understand the concept. But after a few minutes of Jack's coaching, the holographic storms began to respond to her. Not as smoothly as they had with Jack, but enough to prove the technology was real. The broadcast of the challenge spread across council space. Within hours, Jack was receiving messages from worlds he'd never heard of. Scientists wanted to collaborate with him. Leaders wanted to discuss technology sharing. Species that had been kept at the bottom of the council hierarchy saw hope in what a human had accomplished. That evening, Grand Administrator Krell called an emergency session of the High Council. Jack and the Earth delegation were invited to attend, a first in council history for a Class 4 world. The demonstration today has raised questions about our classification system, Krell announced, choosing his words carefully. It appears that human neural architecture may have unique properties we had not previously recognized. Jack stood tall as the council debated Earth's status. The Vagerans argued fiercely against any change, but they were increasingly isolated as other species pointed to the results of the challenge. Perhaps, suggested a council member from a neutral faction, we have been too rigid in our thinking. Different is not necessarily inferior. As the debate continued, Jack received a discreet message on his communication device. It was from Talia. Check your public feed, it read. Your demonstration is changing everything. Jack looked at his device and was stunned to see that recordings of his challenge had spread across the galaxy. Commentators were analyzing the technology. Young scientists were already attempting to replicate aspects of his approach, and on dozens of worlds, populations that had been told they were inferior were seeing proof that the Vagerans could be beaten at their own game. You didn't just win a challenge today, whispered Dr. Reed, who sat beside him. You started a revolution. Jack watched the council argue about humanity's place in the galaxy, the same council that had laughed at Earth just months ago. They weren't laughing anymore. 1 year after the challenge, the Galactic Council looked very different. Earth had been reclassified as a Class 1 Innovation Center, a designation previously reserved for only the most advanced worlds. Human representatives now sat in chambers once exclusive to ancient species, but the biggest changes weren't in politics. They were in how the galaxy approached technology. Jack stood at the observation deck of the new Interspecies Research Institute, watching ships come and go from the massive space station that housed it. The institute had been his idea, but it had quickly grown beyond his original vision. Scientists from over 50 species now worked together here, combining different approaches to technology. Big day, said Talia, joining him at the window. Over the past year, she had become one of his closest friends and allies. Her world, like many others, had received technologies that the Vagerans had kept from them for centuries. Nervous? She asked. Jack smiled. A little. It's not every day you demonstrate a new drive system to the entire galaxy. Today was the unveiling of the first starship built with human-inspired quantum field technology. It represented a complete reimagining of faster-than-light travel, one that used intuitive responses to space-time, rather than brute mathematical calculations. The ship itself was beautiful, a gleaming vessel designed by a committee of 12 different species, each contributing their unique perspective. It had been named Unity in the common galactic language. "Your friend has caused quite a stir," said Professor Orcs, approaching them with a respectful nod. The old scientist had eventually become one of Jack's supporters, though it had taken time for him to accept the human approach. "The Vajrans are still arguing that the ship won't work." "Let them argue," Jack replied. "The results will speak for themselves." Down in the main hangar, final preparations were underway. Dr. Reed was leading the Earth team, working alongside alien engineers to calibrate the neural interfaces. The ship would have a mixed crew, humans working together with other species who had shown aptitude for the intuitive approach to quantum fields. "You know," Talia said softly, "before you came, many of us had given up hope. The Vajrans convinced us that their way was the only way, that if we couldn't think like them, we were simply inferior." Jack nodded. Earth almost fell into the same trap. "We spent so much time trying to copy or establish technologies that we nearly missed our own unique strengths." The announcement system chimed, calling them to the main demonstration hall. As Jack made his way there, he passed representatives from worlds that once wouldn't acknowledge humanity's existence. Now they greeted him with respect, some even with admiration. The demonstration hall was packed. Billions across the galaxy would be watching the broadcast. Jack took his place at the control center, linking to the neural interface that would connect him to the Unity systems. "Ready for pre-launch sequence," called the flight director. Jack closed his eyes and connected with the ship. He could feel the quantum fields around it, the gentle waves of possibility that conventional technology tried to force into rigid patterns. Instead, he let his mind flow with them, guiding rather than controlling. The Unity rose silently from the launch bay. Its engines didn't roar like conventional drives. They hummed with a sound like singing crystal. The ship moved with grace that defied its size, accelerating quickly but smoothly. Then came the moment of truth. Jack guided the ship to the jump point, feeling for the natural seams in space-time rather than tearing through them as traditional drives did. The Unity seemed to shimmer for a moment, then vanished. The tracking systems showed it reappearing exactly on target, halfway across the Cygnus sector, a journey that would have taken conventional ships weeks, completed in seconds. The hall erupted in cheers. Even species known for their reserved nature were celebrating. The demonstration had succeeded beyond even Jack's hopes. Hours later, after countless interviews and congratulations, Jack found a quiet moment alone on the observation deck. He looked out at the stars, thinking about how far humanity had come. From being laughed at, to changing the course of galactic history. A message alert sounded. It was from Earth. New volunteers for the Institute's exchange program. Young engineers and scientists eager to share humanity's perspective with the galaxy. Behind him, Jack heard the door open. He turned to see representatives from a dozen worlds waiting patiently. "Mr. Miller," said one respectfully, "we were hoping to discuss implementing your technology on our homeworlds." Jack smiled. No one was laughing now, and this was just the beginning.